You look at where we are now, both in our community, in our state, and in our country. Unity now becomes one of the most important um, revolutionary acts that we can have as a people. Unity has the ability to shape our community in a way that government never could. Now is the time for us as a people to support one another, support Black initiatives, support Black owned businesses, and make sure that we become responsible for the institutions that we hold most dear in our community.
To those in our community who demanded change, thank you for speaking up. To our community, thank you for your partnership as we move forward.
Where we're going to be talking about the consent decree that was recently signed between Louisville Metro Government, the Louisville Metro Police Department, and the U.S. Department of Justice.
At the end of the day, the people of Louisville deserve constitutional and effective policing and nothing less.
Representative Attica Scott, I'm here today with Stay Live Streams. Thank you for tuning in to this series on the consent decree between the U.S. Department of Justice, the Louisville Metro Police Department, and Louisville Metro Government. We are here today with the Pastor Tim Findley, and it is my honor to talk to Pastor Findley about the consent decree, what got us here, him being a man of faith out on the front lines, and where we go from here. So I'm going to get right into it, Pastor Findley.
Sure.
Well, first, let me start with: is there anything you want to share with folks, Pastor at Kingdom Fellowship? Anything you want to share with folks that I didn't mention?
No, I'm just blessed to be in the city around amazing, positive, impactful people like yourself, and always looking to grow.
Awesome,
Always.
fantastic. Well, we get right into it here.
Sure.
So, 2020, we were out in these streets protesting.
Yeah.
What called you to these streets to stand up for justice?
Well, I grew up in a home that was very, very conscious of what was going on in our community. So it was never for me a situation of making a decision. It was always part of who I am as a person. And when I saw, what had happened with the murder of Breonna Taylor and so many other things, I felt this was that moment for the faith community to be a part of what was already on the ground, what was already brewing.
Absolutely. So, one of the things we want to dig into more, because we spoke to Bishop Lyons and we're going to speak to other faith leaders. But as a man of faith, can you talk about what that movement meant, but what movements mean today? Like, how does faith lead you, guide you, and how do we as a community need to wrap our arms around that?
Absolutely. Well, one of the essential tenets of the Christian faith that doesn't get as much attention as it should is that justice is a part of the gospel. That you can't preach the gospel, you can't preach Jesus, you can't be a worshiper of the God of the Bible and not have a clear view that that is the God of the oppressed, that that is a God that demands justice and puts people in position to represent what those virtues are. So for me as a pastor, as me as a part of the clergy, this is a part of ministry. And it was never about simply being in the church, in the four walls every Sunday. It has to be a faith that's lived out and a faith that's actualized.
Yes, faith without works is dead, right?
Dead.
All right.
Absolutely.
So we're going to get into the consent decree, but I really want to ask you, Pastor, about some things that have led up to where we are today.
Sure.
So we both remember when David McAtee was murdered.
Yes.
Can you talk some about what it meant for you to be out there after he was murdered?
Yeah, and that was an extremely hard, difficult, impactful day. I received a call asking me to come down because the situation was to a boiling point. It was really boiling over. And coming down and seeing the unrest, the angst, the sadness, and anger in the face of people, it did something to me, in terms of my spirit and just realizing that where we were in that moment, it was a tipping point in our city. That people were tired of not just what had happened the night before, but if you remember the fact that they allowed Mr. McAtee's body to be out there that long, it just was one of the most explosive moments that it required leadership, yes, but it also required a place where people could you know, let their emotions be seen. And I think sometimes as leaders, we spend so much time trying to bottle people up and act right and act right.
Yes.
And people need a moment to be able to express what they were feeling. And to be completely honest, as a man of faith, as a community leader, I was mad.
Mhm.
And I was also having to battle with the emotion of it can go one of two ways.
Right.
So for me, being there was both um, important from a community standpoint, but also important for me as an individual because as you remember, that 48-hour window was just extremely difficult,
Yeah.
extremely difficult. So
Mhm. So, you talked about Mr. McAtee,
hmm
Yaya, being out in the street for hours, literally.
hmm
Makes me think about Michael Brown
yeah,
when he was murdered and his
yeah,
body laid out in the street for
the
hours.
sheer disregard for his
Exactly.
humanity.
Exactly. So, Maxwell Mitchell, who does the Stay Live stream, said that you said 4 words
hmm
after Mr. McAtee was killed. Do you remember what those words were, and can you share them with us?
I believe those 4 words were hands up, mouths closed.
What did that mean?
Um, when finally, if I remember correctly, they had allowed the family to come and see Mr. McAtee, or the family was leaving from speaking with the LMPD and others. And I wanted to make sure that we as a community were showing deference and respect to them in the midst of all that anger. That we were showing respect to them because, not just a movement, not just a protest reality. Here was a family that lost a loved one and had to deal with what I call a very disrespectful moment in terms of his body, staying out there that long. And I just wanted them to realize that as a community, we love you, we support you, we're not going anywhere. But I also wanted the community to realize that this is a family that's hurting. We're hurting, they're very much hurting.
Yeah.
And I wanted that to be seen and for them to understand that, we're not here out of control, but we're here representing what should be done in this community, and that is demanding justice.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, 2020, then we get 2022, we get 2024, and you ran for office.
I did. I
Can
did.
you talk about you running for office and what about the movement in 2020 contributed to you running for office?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I had thought about running for office for some years,
Mm,
but it was specifically, and been asked this question many times before. I know the moment and the
mm,
time when I decided to run for mayor.
okay.
I was at Injustice Square,
Mhm.
Brianna Square, and when the news came down that Daniel Cameron would not be charging the officers, there was this palpable feeling of anger, frustration, disappointment, sadness. And I felt all those things. But in that moment, for me, it became clear because here I saw an individual who, with one terrible decision, affects an entire community. And for me, I thought in that moment, that's the power of these offices.
Mm,
That is what the political structure is supposed to be.
mhm,
That we have people who represent the needs of their community
mhm.
and make sure that those kinds of things aren't happening.
That's right.
And for me, that's when I said, you know what? Um, with the protest that happened right after that,
Mhm,
I remember kind of lagging in the back and in
mm.
my mind saying, oh, yeah, I'm going to run.
Okay.
This is it.
Yeah.
So,
All right. That's important.
yeah,
So we're here today. And when we come back from this break, I want to ask you specifically about the consent decree.
sure.
All right.
The lights of Kentucky Performing Arts shine on more than our shows. They illuminate a pathway of discovery for all throughout our Commonwealth. A pathway of creativity, confidence, possibility, of brilliance, inspiration, curiosity, and wonder. For 40 years, Kentucky Performing Arts has led a pathway to unite the Commonwealth around the joy of discovering the arts, and will continue to shine this light far into the future.
Hey, I know you're watching the live stream right now, but I want to take a moment to tell you to check out this new book right here over my shoulder. Believe me, it'll be worth it.
All right, welcome back, y'all. Thanks for staying with us in our interview with Pastor Tim Findley. So, Pastor Findley, we're here at the consent decree moment,
Yes.
right? There's a lot that has led up to this, including many, and I think it was 800 plus people arrested during the
Right.
protest. You were among them.
Yes.
Can you tell us where things stand right now with those charges against you?
Well, it is still in litigation.
Okay.
So those charges have not been dropped. They're still there. It's been ongoing for the last several years. I find it interesting and a little bit sad, when you have a city that was on the national map for what the vast majority of people understood was an injustice, a murder, and people doing what we love to say in America, exercising their civic right, protesting. So the fact that that is still something that many of us are still fighting, to me, is a testament to how serious we are really about people exercising their right. It seems as though there's two sort of approaches to this. Some people can do that, for instance, January the 6th, and everything is fine, and it's national pride, and it's all these wonderful things. But then other people do it, and it's years later, and no one's coming to our defense. There is no pardon. And I just find it interesting, especially in a democratic city, that there isn't more pressure to let this be a lesson, and say, hey, why don't everyone who was a part of this should be sort of pardoned and let off the hook, so to
That's
speak.
right.
And I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but I find it very interesting, very interesting.
It's very telling about our city and where we are that the mayor who's up for re-election next year, 2026, has not called for all the charges to be dropped against protesters, including Pastor Tim Findley, a
Hmm.
pastor, right, of a
Hmm.
congregation, still has those charges pending, right? But it also is telling that you were willing to be one of those people who
Sure,
had
sure,
charges levied against you. So thank you for that leadership.
absolutely.
So we're here at the consent decree.
Hmm.
And we know that federal Judge Beaton has given all the parties involved until February 18th
Hmm.
to provide him with additional information that he requested.
Yeah.
As we wait for February 18th to get here, and we know that President Trump has actually issued an executive order to halt
Right.
consent decrees, which impact Louisville, impact Memphis, other places. Can you talk some about what the consent decree would mean for people that you serve at Elder Serve?
Sure, sure. ElderServe being one of Louisville's largest nonprofits dedicated solely to senior services. Here we have what I always say is a forgotten demographic, forgotten community of our seniors. And so many times they are not just young people, not just young black men, they are also dealing with the issues within LMPD and how they're treated, and some of the very, you know, public critiques of LMPD. So for many of the seniors and clients at ElderServe, they're very much attentive to what's going to happen during this time. And I think it's important that as a leadership body in Louisville, our mayor, governor, we know what Donald Trump has said. It doesn't matter. You have an opportunity to show seniors, the city, that you take these recommendations serious. In my opinion, if anything less is done, it is a slap in the face of the entire community.
Yes.
That it should not take the president and his foolishness causing us to cower behind, well, they said this, so we're going to. No, no. We have to do what's right. And we have to uphold all of those areas that have been publicly shown to be a problem within LMPD. We have to do it. I don't think we have a choice. And the fact of the matter is, the community's watching, and it's important that those who have a voice politically stand up and speak out right now.
Absolutely. And thank you, Pastor Tim Findley, for sharing about Elder Serve. And it's also a reminder for folks that you may have seen a lot of young folks out at the protest in 2020. Those were some of the loudest voices that you heard. But it's also important to remember there were elders who
Yes.
were out at Injustice Square. There were elders who were marching. There were elders who were arrested. And so we cannot forget
Right.
any population in our community who have been impacted by violent policing. So as we begin to close out, Pastor Finley, I want to ask you two things. One, I want to give you a minute to think about, which
Sure.
is if there's anything you want to share with folks that we didn't address. But the other is really around the consent decree, and you've alluded to it a little bit with what you just said. Where do we go from here? So you've got maybe a couple of tracks. Judge Beaton says, I'm a federal judge. I can sign this consent decree because I am not under
Right.
the
Right.
president's executive orders. Or Judge Beaton can say, I don't see the need for this executive order, which he's alluded to a little bit. So I'm not going to sign it. So what do we do if we end up with the situation where, let's say, he doesn't sign it?
Sure. And I don't want to be a pessimist, but I'm going to be very honest with you. I don't expect the right thing to be done by certain areas of our criminal justice system and really even in our political landscape. I sort of approach things thinking the wrong thing is going to be done. So if it's not signed, I think regardless, the community has to demand and make those demands public what we want LMPD to be. The thing that we have to remember as a community is that LMPD works for the people, that LMPD is in position to ensure the safety of the community. And we have to make it known to our police chief. We also have to make it known to those who are in political offices that we put there. And even if you didn't vote for the mayor, he is still the mayor of the city you live in and works for you. And it's important that we make sure that there is a demand that, hey, no matter what side, we deserve a police department that serves and protects all of us and does not prey on us. And this is not opinion. There have been too many independent studies that have come in and said, this is the state of LMPD. We have enough evidence. We don't need any more think tanks. We don't need any more questionnaires. We know what the problem is. And there has to be community involvement so that we can make sure what's being done is in line with our city, the values that we have or say we have, and where we want to go as a community.
Absolutely. So we don't need LMPD praying on us, but thank you for people like Pastor Findley who pray for us. That's what we need. So Pastor Findley, I want to give you the closing moments to share with folks. Anything you want to share that we haven't talked about?
Well, I want to see more black people, and I say that unapologetically, run for office. I want to see more black political action committees that are dedicated to incubating, training, and preparing black candidates. That's what I'm focusing on. That's what I see for our city. If there's going to be a change, it is not going to be us hoping that someone comes along uh, and begins to relate to our issue. We need someone from the community that knows it, that lives it, and can step into these offices because that's where change is going to happen. And that's what I want. There's somebody right now, 18-year-old, 19-year-old, 24-year-old, 27-year-old, man, woman, doesn't matter. But somebody who is saying, listen, is this the time? Now's the time. And we want to be in position to make sure that you're successful.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Pastor
Mhm.
Finley, for joining us here on Stay Live Streams. Folks, it's Black History Month. If you watch the YouTube recording of Kendrick Lamar's performance at the Super Bowl, you know that it was the Black Lead Blackness Super Bowl performance that we've
Blackest
ever
one.
had, right? So, y'all, it's our time, as Pastor Finley said,
Yeah.
to step up, right? We need to step up, show up, stand up, speak out. Again, it's Black History Month. Celebrate it. I honor, respect, love, and value you. As always, stay healthy, stay safe, and stay live.
If you do nothing else,
If you do nothing else.
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 Stay live.